So to kick off, I just want to say that sustainability is about expanding the boundaries of decision making, right? It's really about thinking beyond your business or yourself, thinking on the impact on the environment, impact on people, and that's the very essence of sustainability. And this is what's required to lay a foundation for resilient businesses. So, like I said, we have the best panel of speakers, and they are the real deal when it comes to transformation. So, to kick off, I would like to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourselves, your businesses or your organizations, and the values that underpin your business. I'll start from Lisa.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. My name's Lisa Ashford. I'm co-CEO of EthX. EthX is a direct impact investing platform in the UK. And for over 10 years, we've been helping ordinary people by being able to align their money with their morals and invest directly into projects which are making real, tangible, positive impact on the ground. Transparency is absolutely key to us at EthX, and it embodies our organization. Sustainability isn't a department at EthX. It is actually at the core of everything we do. Every organization that raises finance on EthX actually has to have an environmental or a social goal at its heart. And through that, that's how we ensure sustainability and we enable people to make direct choices with their money.
Amazing. So you've heard sustainability is at the core of what they do. That's how to transform a business. So I'll pass the mic over to Cora.
Hello. Oh, that's very loud. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Cora Purdy. I'm the sustainability manager at Surrey. For those who don't know what Surrey is an electric toothbrush business, but we're built to basically redesign your everyday kind of essentials into an elevated ritual, mainly through thoughtful design, curated so high performance, and also focusing on reducing waste. And for our award-winning toothbrush, and we've also just launched into our wet product section as well with our toothpaste. But in terms of what's kind of core to our business, Surrey actually stands for Sustainable Rituals. So sustainability is really built in at all ends of the supply chain, from the very start in our design phase all the way to our end of life.
Amazing. And I'll head over to Chris. Notice the hat, everyone.
Hi, I'm Chris from Cheeky Panda. I'm the co-founder of this business. So we started this business back in 2016 with the simple idea of using bamboo, which is the world's fastest growing plant, as an alternative to deforestation. So we were the first company in the UK to develop bamboo tissue products. It's worked out really well. I think that when we look at what our mission is, we don't believe that the future of hygiene is deforestation products wrapped in plastic. Our mission is, if you can make really healthy products affordable at the same price as like your Andrexes and Cushelle, then you can change the market. And I'm a big believer in small acts by millions of people can change the world.
Amazing. It's always good to hear from businesses who embed sustainability, from the foundation. But we're not living out everyone, so I'm going to bring in Nigel here to please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nigel Lehane. I'm now an independent sustainability consultant, having worked in consultancy for pretty much all of my career. So my company's values are basically my own at the moment. And obviously I do try to act ethically and do what I can in my own humble way in terms of sustainability, but more importantly, it's the work I do with my clients, and that's always been the guiding principle throughout my career. Partly it's, and especially now I have the luxury of being able to choose who I work with. I do try to work with organisations that have similar values and that really are trying to make a difference for whatever reason is important to them. Doesn't mean I neglect organisations that are a little bit further behind. They need encouragement as well. But I think it really is important that we tackle sustainability at all ends of the spectrum, to push organisations further forward.
Thank you so much, Nigel. So you've heard sort of how sustainability is embedded in the culture or the value of the organization. I think sustainability also needs to be embedded in operations and supply chain. So just another round of questions for my speakers. Can you please share how sustainability is embedded in your operations and supply chain? And we'd like some good case studies of that as well. Like how do you scale? How do you measure it as well? And how do you make sure it's viable commercially? So perhaps I'll start from Lisa again.
Yeah, so every investment opportunity that is on the FX platform for everyday people to invest in has to either or contribute to a better climate, build more resilient communities, or to enable a fairer society. So those 3 points are absolutely critical to every investment that is available. And we ensure that through really rigorous due diligence. So as you can imagine, when we bring investments onto the platform, they have to go through rigorous financial due diligence. But actually for FX, we actually have to do that DD through the impact as well. So what is it that the organization is saying that they're going to do? What is their forecast? How are they going to obtain that? And is it measurable? And actually, beyond that, how can we actually tell a compelling story to consumers and individuals? Because without telling the story, you've lost everything. So, as an example, a community energy scheme, which is building a ground-mounted solar installation on a former coal mine in the Midlands. So that is a brilliant example of the types of projects that really are creating multiple wins across climate and community, where some of the community benefit goes back into that local economy. And then in terms of scaling, we use a digital platform that enables us to scale very efficiently through all the investments that we list, and for thousands of individuals to come to us and invest through the platform. And that enables us to go further than some of the older tech style that the financial industry uses historically and still to this day.
Oh, thank you very much, Cara. Thank you very much, Lisa and Cara.
Thank you. So for Surrey, circularity is one of our kind of key pillars. So in terms of embedding sustainability in the supply chain, it really starts with our designers. In terms of locking in kind of your product life cycle, about 80% of that product's kind of like whole lifestyle journey or whole life cycle is decided within the design phase. So we really work very close with our product team to understand the most sustainable materials. We don't have all the answers. I think I must caveat with that, and I'm pretty sure most businesses don't. But really making those choices at the very start of the journey, so it doesn't cause you a headache further down the line, and really getting those our product team in the same room as recyclers as well to actually understand the end of life journey. So in terms of kind of upstream, so we've kind of decided what materials we're using. We work really closely with our suppliers. Surrey is only about 3 years old, maybe 4 years now. So we are very much at the start of our journey. However, we've just onboarded SEDEX, and we also have a supplier code of conduct that we have all of our suppliers read and sign, and then we work with them to kind of create sustainability goals for our suppliers as well. So our upstream is kind of looked at in terms of sustainability all the way down to our end of life.
Oh, thank you, Cara. And yes.
So I think I'll give a real world example. I mean, like, because we are using bamboo, which next to water and sunshine is one of the most renewable resources on the planet, you have to start somewhere. And when we first started doing our bamboo tissue, we went to our factory and said, we really want paper wrapping. And we were only bought one container. And they went, well, it's impossible. You have to do plastic wrapping. But it was always a goal for us that we would have paper wrapping. So by about sort of 2019, 3 years into our business, we got to the scale where we were at a level where the manufacturer could say, okay, well, you can do it, but it's going to cost you a lot more money. Now, we made that switch without knowing how many returns we would get, we basically stopped selling our biggest selling line, which was packs of 9s, and they were available in retailers. And we didn't think about how many returns we were going to get. We didn't think about, we just felt that it was the right thing to do. And when I look at like a case of toilet tissue, on average it's got about 50 grams of plastic. And since sort of 2019, we've sold over 5 million units a year. So the amount of impact that we've made by moving on to paper wrapping has been tens of thousands of kilograms. So, there's measurable stuff that you can kind of do within your business, which is like, we're one of the first companies to become a B Corp. We're one of the first 100 in the UK to become a B Corp. We're a gold EcoVadis supplier, so we're very, very serious about the tracking and the measurement and all the things that we can do in terms of like green energy through our supply chain. But we're also about doing the right thing, and sometimes it's not always just following the codes or following the standards. It's feel within your gut, what do you think is the right thing to do, and then finding a way to do it.
Amazing, thank you. And Nigel?
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's been a step change in the way that we look at sustainability in recent years. As you can probably tell, I've been in consultancy for quite a long time, and when I started, organisations were concerned about managing hazardous waste, not causing fuel spills, pollution to the environment. It's changed radically. I heard the term ecosystem, big business ecosystem, bandied around in various presentations yesterday. And that ecosystem has changed hugely. In that all the components, the elements within that system, whether it's government, whether it's investors, other stakeholders, customers, are all becoming more aware. They're all putting demands on organisations. So organisations have to adapt, just like any organism, and evolve, and that includes focusing on their supply chains as well, because they're not operating in isolation. So there's far more emphasis in partnering, collaboration, mutual support. Design and development departments, as were mentioned, are hugely important in that process. Working again throughout the supply chain, through the life cycle, with designers in all of those different stages to ensure that they optimize the outcomes from a process delivering a particular product or service. So it's becoming much more sophisticated. Players in the market are becoming more knowledgeable. I find it now very common that my clients are either producing environmental attribute certificates or are seeking those to provide verification and confidence in the materials that they're using, whereas a few years ago that wouldn't have been the case. So it is evolving dramatically. And I'll just hold this document up. ISO launched the draft international standard 1460 this week. It went out for consultation for 3 months last week, the standard for net zero aligned organisations. And that obviously plays very heavily into the supply chain, the life cycle, dealing with scope 3 emissions. And I think it's initiatives like that that are really focusing organisations on the life cycle, whereas previously they were less involved, less aware of the importance of those issues. And just finally, sorry, ISO 14001 2026, the revised standard, was published earlier this year. Very few or no real significant new requirements, but there is more emphasis on the life cycle in that as well, expecting organisations to understand their life cycle impacts and be preparing to manage them.
Thank you very much, Nigel. I forgot to say there'll be time to take questions from the audience, okay? So I'll ask one last question on transforming businesses, and then I'll take your questions, and then we'll go to the next round of questions, okay? So please keep your questions coming and write them down. Okay, so my next question is really on transforming businesses. So I believe that transforming businesses for a sustainable future requires institutional and system level change, right? And there's change you can do in terms of the value system of your organization, in terms of your supply chains, but you really need to get there. You need to be involved in policy changes, setting standards. I would like to ask how your organizations are shaping this wider ecosystem, and maybe I'll start with Nigel this time around, and then end with Lisa. Yes, please.
Okay. Again, as I'm a one-man band, I'll speak on behalf of one of my clients. I won't name them because I haven't asked their permission to do so, but I would be surprised if they were reluctant for me to name them because they are a very impressive small organisation, 110 employees, and they've undergone a sea change in the last few years. I started doing a little bit of work for them 5 years ago. After a couple of years, I was becoming a bit disillusioned. They didn't really seem to take it seriously. Change then at senior level, senior management level. Wow, that transformed the business. Top management recognised that their customers were expecting them to demonstrate, particularly in relation to climate change, that they were taking action. They were committed to working towards net zero. And that has transformed the way they operate. Throughout the business, it is a relatively small one, all departmental heads taken on responsibility for tackling emissions within their parts of the business. There's a lot of support from finance team, finance director. Obviously, there's no unlimited budget, but it's so easy to have conversations about doing the right thing because senior management has recognised that's what their ecosystem is now expecting, and that's what their customers want them to deliver.
Thank you. And Chris, please.
So, I mean, I think when we talk about sustainability, we talk about supply chain. I'd like to talk about it from, you can turning it into a consumer advantage. So we're a brand, you can obviously tell the Panda hat, you know, we're very much about, you know, retail consumer. And, you know, one of the things I would sort of say is, if, you know, you can tell your story, and we do a lot of storytelling, both within our videos, our sort of social channels, through the influencers, through the blogs and through the website. If you can, even on our packaging as well. So if you can then sort of say to people, this is what we're doing, being open, honest, transparent, then actually that really becomes very sticky. And like, you know, as a high consumer goods company, it's all about repeat purchases for us. And, you know, the most important thing is when we bring people to the top of the funnel, is can we make it sticky? And it's not just about making that click expedient. It's about that long-term recurring revenue. And like when you're looking at investments, every time that we have to spend money, we have to spend money on EcoVadis, we have to spend money on like ISOs, you know, we have to spend money on B Corp. There's lots and lots of money, okay, there's lots of asks. But what are you getting back from it? So this is kind of where you have to be a little bit creative and kind of sort of show actually, not only it's the right thing to do, but there's commercial benefits to that. And I think when the organization starts to understand your commercial benefits about why you're doing things for the right reason and actually showing that data is actually having an impact on sales, I think that's when it makes it a lot easier, not just for you as a company, but also to your partners as well. And it's something that we work with through our channel really well, and our channel partners. And the ones that get it really, really embrace it, and it just accelerates from there.
Oh, thank you, Chris and Cora.
Amazing. I would definitely agree with everything you've just said there. Especially Surrey is also a B Corp as well, and the return of investment, not just from your business, from like de-riskifying pretty much most of your supply chain operations, but also kind of that return on investment, retaining staff as well. Although your culture is a really big thing. For us, in terms of transforming kind of the industry, the toothbrush industry typically has a lot of waste. And one of the things that we are trying to focus on is reducing that waste. So actually, in terms of materials and innovation, our toothbrush heads, and unlike a normal, a typical kind of toothbrush head that you would get, is usually made of fossil fuel-based plastic. So when our founders set out to create our brush, they thought there must be another thing that we can make these from. And our toothbrush heads are actually derived from plant-based plastics, so from PLA, so derived from cornstarch, and our bristles are made from castor oil, which basically grows in very drought areas. So we're, again, reducing that kind of reliance on fossil fuel-based plastic. And what we've done compared to other businesses is we actually run a take-back scheme. So when you've used your brush heads, after 3 months, as dentists recommend, we ask you to send them back to us. So I have the lovely job of going through lots of moldy toothbrush heads. But one of my great projects last year was actually turning those toothbrush heads into something else and showing that circularity is viable and you can create a product that does sell. So we took our toothbrush heads back. We've worked with recyclers based in the UK to kind of clean those up, shred them, and basically make them into a pellet that we were able to injection mold into a soap dish. So we worked with a company called Reborn, and we co-manufactured a soap dish, and they're actually made of 18 toothbrush heads. So we're just showing the industry that there is actually scope for circularity, and that isn't just a passion project, it actually can create something that's usable, beautifully designed, and it just works very functionally in your home, and also is good for the planet.
Amazing. I promised you real stories, like real case studies. So that's excellent. And Lisa, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that's such a great case study. And I'd say it's going beyond transforming to try and disrupt the sector that you're in or that particular product line. For ethics, we're in financial services, I would say is very traditionally an opaque, very traditional, old-fashioned sector, which requires full disruption from start to finish. And from our point of view, that is what we're really trying to do. So, we're trying to make things transparent, we're trying to make it really easy for individuals, and really we're trying to make it much more tangible. Because when you compare it to a traditional financial product where it's very opaque, you don't know where your money's going, you don't know if it's doing harm or good generally, and if you did want to be inquisitive and actually drill down into that, you'd find it very, very difficult. So what can we do to be disruptive about that? Literally put it on the page. This is where your money's going. This is the impact it's going to create. This is the financial return that you will expect. And, this is basically your connection to create a positive impact. And so we're trying to really demonstrate that that is something different, and it's something very engaging for individuals who wouldn't necessarily get involved in investing because it's seen as too scary, don't understand it, that's not me. So.
Amazing. So we can take 2 or 3 questions from the audience before we go to our next round of questioning to focus on consumers. Yeah. So any questions? Any other questions? Okay. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Zanora. I run a branding studio called Of Possible Futures, and I was interested to hear you talk about how you're changing your manufacturing processes, internal processes, etc. But I wanted to ask a question about how you communicate or how you tell your stories to people that aren't actually interested in sustainability or who haven't got, they're not making value-based product choices.
That's an excellent question because that was my next question. Before we answer, I don't know, is there any other question from the audience? Because that's my next question. So we're coming to that in a minute. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for all the panelists. My name is Kirati. My quick question would be that, is there any challenges that would be a big challenge 3 years, 5 years ago, but now it's easily overcome, or any misconception that people or business usually think this would be a challenge, but not in real implementation? Thank you.
So do we take Kirati's question and then we'll take the communicating, your values. So we'll take that next, but we'll take the second question.
I'm happy to talk on that. I would sort of say that maybe before when we started our business in 2016, you would have like what we call a black swan event, and a black swan event would be something that would happen every 7 to 10 years. I think since 2016 we've had a black swan event every single year. So where traditionally you would sort of say we don't need to worry too much about that, you need to build agility and resilience into your business. We've had Brexit, we've had FX crisis, we've had boats getting stuck in the Suez Canal, we've had Ukraine war, we've had COVID, we've had just this plethora of things that have impacted business. And the key thing for me in terms of sustainability is how much of it can you control? Because in this world, you don't know what's around the corner.
Amazing. Any other thing to add to that, like challenges in the last 3 years? How has it changed? It's getting better?
I think for us, in terms of like the circularity of taking back the heads, that hadn't been done before. There was no infrastructure, and actually, to be completely honest, when our founders started that scheme, we had no idea how we were going to do it. So I'd say, in terms of advice for challenges such as that, is don't delay it. Just start doing it, and you'll figure it out. A lot of the issues with the current recycling systems, especially in the UK at the moment, is they're not set up for these things. We see sustainable packaging, lots of home compostable things come through. We've seen them. There's definitely some here at the event, and the actual systems aren't there. They're not set up yet, but we have to actually start that, create that en masse, and then they will follow suit. So I think it's definitely difficult in terms of like what the infrastructure is currently set at, but I think as long as you're doing it and a lot of other businesses kind of get on board with you, and there's a kind of a mass bit behind that and a sustainable drive, I think that's how we change the system.
So we'll come to the consumer question. So I see sort of consumer engagement as a two-sided coin. On one side, there are consumers who are unaware, disengaged from sustainability. And on the other side, you have these highly aware consumers, okay? So let's start, which is aligns with your question. For those who are completely disengaged, how do you educate, empower, make them aware of sustainability? How do you communicate your values to the consumer? And yeah, so maybe I'll start from Lisa.
Yeah, so we have to do so much education, and that's where it starts really, because individuals don't necessarily see themselves as investors, and particularly, women really shy away from investment in general. So, how do you change behaviour, and how do you get over those barriers in society? I think you've got to really break it down. You've got to get rid of the jargon. You've got to really try and demystify finance, because I think there is this industry which has thrived in being quite complex and actually relying on people not asking too many questions. And so we've got to get rid of that, right? So you've got to really take it back down to basics. And then it is about creating these amazing stories and giving people the opportunity actually to get involved. So with a lot of the organisations that raise finance through us, individuals can invest in those projects. They also can become a member of the organisation through a cooperative style company structure or a community benefit structure. And so they can go and actually be part of the board. They can have a vote. It's one member, one vote. You can go to site. You can really see what the transformation and impact is on the ground. And that is a much more democratic way of running finance and actually empowering individuals. And it's those small steps. Make it easy through really accessible small investments, £50. And then you can try it without feeling you're risking a lot of money, and learn as you go. And I don't think the traditional financial services sector is really organised in that way, so trying to do it differently.
I'll bring in Nigel here, and then I'll end with Chris and Cora. So Nigel, how do you?
Thank you. Well, I can't really speak on behalf of domestic consumers. I'm involved in business-to-business operations. Some of my clients struggle with convincing the doubters that their products and services actually do add value and are worth them perhaps spending a premium on. So they have to be careful with their resources. They can only do so much. So they focus on obviously trying to win work, trying to win customers who they think are willing to, are receptive to what they do. But through all the great work they do with those, it provides them with a huge amount of information, the stories that Lisa was talking about, that they can then use to try and engage the disbelievers. They don't put so much effort into that, but they have the very convincing arguments there that they can offer. If there's any slight sniff of interest, then they'll follow it up. But they won't kick against a permanently closed door. Is the real truth.
Oh, thank you. So for Cora and Chris, sorry, I'm going to throw the other side of the question to you. So on one side, how do you communicate your values? And then for those consumers who are sustainable and want sustainable products, how do you maintain authenticity and trust?
I think I'll want to go back to the original question a little bit. How do you get people that aren't into sustainability So like bamboo, a lot of people know bamboo. They've had bamboo clothing, they've had bamboo socks, they've had bamboo bed sheets. But they know bamboo's a great product. So when we get people to try our bamboo tissue and our balsam tissue, people go, wow, right? So that's the first thing that you can do is you can get them to actually, you can create products that are better than what already exists in the market. And the trick is, if you create a better product, you make it the same price and it's sustainable, that's where you get the repeat purchase. So it's a simple hack. Get as many people to try it as possible, and then you'll then convert them because they'll be like, this is so much better than what I was using before.
Amazing.
100%. Just to build on that, I think for us, our customers are really in three buckets. There's the bucket A, that's like the aesthetic of a brush. It's a very pretty brush. She sticks in the mirror and she looks gorgeous. There's also our consumers that want a great clean. It is a toothbrush at the end of the day. It has to perform really well. And then we also have our sustainable customers. However, they can't be in just one of three buckets. They have to be in a couple. And sustainability usually isn't our main converter. It's a lovely add-on. And at the end of the day, it is a toothbrush. We have to perform well. It has to have that great clean. And that's why we're an award-winning toothbrush at the end of the day. But for those consumers that maybe aren't engaged in sustainability, if it's already embedded into the brush or into the product, you actually are already converting them, and then they're in your funnel. And then from them, they're receiving more of your marketing information. We have lots of communications on our packaging, for instance, on our Instagrams, TikToks. Once you're in the funnel for Surrey, you usually see it everywhere, to be completely honest. So I think it is a difficult one when you're trying to convert people that really aren't as interested. But I think as you've kind of build on what Chris says, once they've tried the product, they're kind of, yeah, they're in that funnel, and they will learn a little bit more about it, and then through word of mouth, they'll tell their friends, their family, and yeah, I think that's the way to kind of get it through, and especially like storytelling as well. Sorry, I feel like I talk quite a lot about these soap dishes, but I'm very proud of them. But when we launched that, we did a big story behind the scenes of kind of how we've got all those toothbrush heads back and we converted them in. We brought our film crews into the factory, which was really scary, to be honest, because we only had a finite amount of material. So we only really had one big production run, which we were filming at the same time. So really had no chance if we were getting it wrong. But really bringing those consumers on the journey. And we did get a lot of questions before, kind of what do you do with the heads? And actually having that proof point, it has actually provided a lot of trust to our consumers. But yeah, we do have a lot of our kind of consumers who are really into sustainability, and they do challenge us. They ask us a lot of questions, and they actually force us to be a lot better. And that's kind of what forms the impact of our impact report that we publish every year. And also because we're a B Corp as well, we're going under recertification at the moment. We really have to get to that higher level of standards. So even for consumers that maybe aren't that interested in sustainability, we do have that badge of being B Corp on our packaging, on our website, etc. So they know there's a quality of service that they're getting there.
Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in on that last point. I guess for those who are aware but skeptical, you have to be radically transparent with your product or service. And I think that's a great case study is, going behind the scenes, filming, storytelling. But, you've got to really show your track record. You've got to measure it. You've got to benchmark it. You need to be able to demonstrate to those people that you really are doing what you say you will do. And also, I think you've got to be really honest about where you fall below the mark and say, well, I understand that this is our aspiration, but in our impact report, we do also have a section which is our shortcomings. And so, what is our aspiration? Where do we want to get to? And what are we doing to try and achieve that? And I think through that sort of transparency comes that authenticity, and that is what will win over those skeptics. That and actually being able to provide an opportunity to put a face behind the brand as well, where they can actually ask questions, meet people, really start to feel some kind of connection with that brand. And I think, we could go on and talk more about that kind of advocacy as well.
can we take one more question, two more questions? Any other questions from the audience?
Hi there. My name's Leah. I work in Admiral, which is a financial services, car insurance most people know for. It's really interesting to hear it from like more the consumer base. We obviously don't have a physical product to sell as such. So it's really interesting to kind of find out from your perspective that circularity piece. For example, we're repairing cars. And we have parts that we use that maybe could be recyclable. And so, how can businesses that maybe aren't selling physical products do what you're doing, but in their own spaces? And I know, Lisa, you've kind of spoke on that in that area, but yeah, any other thoughts on how organisations like us could do something similar?
You can 100% influence your supply chain.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, we supply a lot of issue and facilities management, so you can make yourself greener. But if you're looking at providing like car repair stuff, then you should be looking for partnerships with car repair companies that are providing that circularity. And if they don't meet those standards, then you shouldn't be giving them the mass contracts, because there's a lot of impact, like hundreds of millions of pounds of impact you can actually make in the UK economy. So it's about setting that accountability. And if some people don't meet the standards, well, I'm sorry, give it to the person that does.
Yeah, I think partnerships and collaboration is absolutely key. So going beyond perhaps your own service, who are the other stakeholders in your particular sector where you can connect, and can you produce something which is, bigger than the sum of the parts? How can you influence policy? How can you take a position and really put yourself out there as a leader? Because, if you just operate within your own tram lines, then you might find yourself quite limited. So I think, being able to go broader and work with others is absolutely key.
Any other advice for businesses that are service-based? How do you embed sustainability into a service? Or yeah, can we take one more question? Yeah, thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Thank you. Hello. It's so weird to hear yourself back in the headphones. I'm Lydia. I'm from TerraCycle, that some of you may be familiar with. I have a question on what it is like to scale as a company that is embedding sustainability as a core value. Obviously, we've spoken about commercial viability, how to drive commercial viability, but I'm interested in how that translates into scaling as a inherently sustainable company, and interested to hear your thoughts on scaling.
I'll take this one. So, as I said before, Surrey is very young, but we have scaled massively. We are now not just UK based, we also have a lot of retailers in the US as well. It is really difficult, to be completely honest. Even the word sustainability is quite a controversial word in itself. Scaling is very, very hard, especially as a startup. You have retailers potentially banging on your door, trying to get your items into stock, and although you might want to sea freight everything, you might have to then air freight stuff, and that affects your carbon budget. So it is really difficult, but actually for us, having kind of your policies in place and actually having that as a core value. So we have 3 core values, but sustainability is actually the kind of rock bottom of it, and all 3 of those so kind of come from that. I think when you're making decisions, we always have sustainability as kind of the other stakeholder in the room, and they will always kind of have their say. I think Faith and Nature are a really great brand because they actually have sustainability on their board, nature on their board. So yeah, I think it is difficult with scaling, but kind of always bringing it back to what's the point of this? If we are a brand that champions sustainability, how does this decision affect that, and how does it affect our goals as well? Because yes, you might be commercially wanting to get into a lot more stores, but say you have targets to meet in terms of like carbon budgets, etc. How is that going to affect that, and also affect your brand and risk as well?
I mean, as a scale-up brand as well, I'd probably sort of say you have to invest. I mean, the thing is, for me, it's about how big the piece of the pie do you want. So, we started our business in our back bedroom, and we've now got 1% of the UK tissue market. But we weren't able to get there because if we didn't take money from external sources. So, yeah, you have to sort of like, if you want to get bigger faster, you need to be able to kind of invest into the curve. But then you need to be able to show profitability as part of that. It's kind of like we take a step approach to it. So grow, spend money, lose a little bit of money, find ourselves back into profitability, go again. So it's kind of like always kind of going in that sort of ladder. And I think that's kind of a great approach to not overextending yourself, because if you overextend yourself, you create a burn and you can never come back from the burn. So for me, it's about having, and just because somebody says they're going to be a great investor doesn't mean they're going to be a great investor. So always just check that if people are coming into a business like yourselves, is what is the terms that they're offering? Have they got voting rights on you? Could they sack everybody and take over the company? So I think there's lots of great partners out there that will invest with you, and I think that platform that you've got is a great way to do it versus some more traditional private equity.
Can I just talk very quickly our experience as well? Not always recommended, but from our point of view, we've also tried to take a quite innovative approach and try and leverage what we have. So not only do we have FX, but we have a sister platform called Energize Africa, and that is essentially doing very similar to what we do in the UK, but trying to accelerate energy access in sub-Saharan Africa using innovative forms of finance. So we saw an opportunity, crazy some would say, but actually it was in partnership with UK Aid, and we said, okay, we're going to go for this. And so we've managed to create a business that is creating scale by leveraging off our core business and utilizes probably a really good amount of capital to create a hell of a lot more in terms of what's invested. So £1 million for FX, which was invested in us as a business, has created over, it's like we're close to $250 million of investment that has come through FX and Energize Africa, which is kind of like, whew.
Perhaps just to build on comments that some of the other speakers have made. In relation to risk, I think it's not just the profitability, financial risk of expanding quickly, but it's the risk of not being able to live up to those values that have given you that impetus in the marketplace to expand. So I think there needs to be some caution there to make sure you can actually deliver what you're promising to at scale.
Yeah. And one final question. So reflecting on your organization's journey to a more sustainable future, so reflecting on the biggest barriers and the biggest successes, what advice would you give to sustainability leaders, businesses, members of the audience, everyone attending Reset Connect today, those who are trying to drive meaningful transformation within, and outside their organization? Maybe I'll start with Nigel.
Get everybody involved, get support, internally and externally. You've got to have top management support. Once they're committed, once they've made it very clear what they want the business to achieve, it's then far easier for the sustainability team to take that forward. Obviously, the sustainability team themselves have a huge role to play in identifying opportunities, practicalities, etc., being able to demonstrate that the organisation is living up to those ideals, delivering what it needs to. But support throughout is absolutely vital. Functional heads, as I say, top management, etc., driving it internally, but also externally. I think, again, senior management have a big role to play in boosting the reputation of a business and its brand by their public engagement, whether it's involved in supporting development of national policy or whether it's simply involved in discussions with potential customers. They have that credibility, and if they understand the sustainability arguments and the offerings that the organisation can provide, then that can be very, very powerful.
Thanks, Chris.
So I would say leaders lead, and what that means is you stand out. You don't just follow everyone else. You actually you work. And sometimes sustainability teams are the smallest team in very large companies, and you've not got much of a voice. But if everybody else in those teams at your peer level is sitting on their hands, and you drive forward a change, and then that change impacts something like the share price or the number of sales it's making, then you've actually made a big impact, and you're probably going to be the person that gets promoted. So don't be the person that follows, be the person that leads.
Some great points. To build upon kind of what both yourself and Nigel have said, education and also embedding it within other teams. To be completely honest, I guess the role of a sustainability manager is to eventually not have a job, because we eventually will embed sustainability throughout all the different departments, and that's kind of what the end goal is. We want to champion everyone within their own departments to basically champion sustainability for us and bringing them on that journey. We had a panel back in April time. We had Wild and Chili's speaking on it, and both of them have really, really robust actually sustainability kind of collectives where they bring together people from lots of different departments. For Surrey, we're still quite a small team, so I can just turn to my next door neighbour and kind of discuss a problem quite easily. But if you have larger teams, then actually having some form of committee is really helpful, and also education. So, I mean, we do a lot with bioplastics, but actually does our marketing team really understand what bioplastics are? And that's really important, especially with like ECGT, all the different kind of like green claims kind of codes coming out. So really having that education behind it so your team can really speak fluently to kind of the sustainable elements of your business, I think is really important. But yeah, having your teams really engaged it and like really understand why you're doing this, and especially understanding from those teams kind of what the driver is in that within their department. So for instance, with our kind of more of our creative team, they buy a lot of stuff, kind of clothes and accessories for shoots. Is there a way that we can make that more sustainable by using charity shops, Vinted, etc.? For our commercial team, the cost of sea freight versus air freight. So really understanding those niche abilities that kind of each department needs, and then kind of flipping that on its head and be like, so this is actually how sustainability can benefit you in this way. And I think that's the real way to embed it within your departments.
Thank you.
A slightly different approach, I would say, thinking about your customers, don't be afraid to use the crowd in helping you to achieve your goals. So if you are able to give those customers some kind of stake or buy-in to your goals and your impact strategy, then you can really create some really interesting transformation. And I think they can become your biggest advocates, your cheerleaders, they can spread the message, they can hold you to account. And I think that has a real opportunity to go much bigger than your own organisation. And I think that's a really exciting prospect that sometimes organisations don't get to. So be brave.
Amazing. So we're leaving you with 4 key takeaways to drive transformation. So the first is get everyone involved, right? Internally, externally, consumers, customers. The second is be the person that leads, because leaders lead, and that's from Chris. The third is educate your teams. Make sure it's embedded within other themes and your themes, and watch out for your job as well. And the final one is don't be afraid to use the crowd to achieve your goals. So thank you very much for staying until the end of this panel. And I think it's time for lunch. So have a lovely afternoon.